in the winter time, when all the leaves are brown and the wind blows, and the birds have all flown for the summer.
Hello again, everyone, and this is Lester Rhodes with your winter weather outlook for 2012-2013. Welcome everybody to the video. Sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy this year's outlook. We're going to take a look at some technical aspects with this forecast. There's going to be a lot of science and meteorology involved, and I think you're going to learn something here. So let's see what the keys to the forecast are going to be. We're going to review fall of 2012 and take a look at the patterns that we've seen so far this fall season. Are we going to see ENSO neutral or weak El Nino conditions? We will look at some information on that in regards to the current sea surface temperatures out there and what the models are talking about. Blocking certainly to return. We've already seen it this fall with a negative NAO, and back in September and early October a negative EPO as well, where we had the big block over Alaska. So I think we're going to see some of that again this winter. We're still seeing a negative NAO blocking pattern right now. That was one of the factors in regards to Hurricane Sandy's destruction. And we'll take a look at the snow and ice cover maps, and as always, it's important to keep your eyes on that in October and now that as we're going into November. And we'll take a look at some long-range climate model forecasts. The CFS version 2, that's put out by the CPC Climate Prediction Center, and also the Japanese climate model, the JMA, as well, which correctly predicted last winter's scorcher, so to speak. So that'll be interesting. Okay, what's happened so far this fall? Well, as I've said, we've already had the blocking, and that has in turn led to slow-moving storm systems like Sandy, because when you have a block, low-pressure systems have time to deepen and amplify and get stronger because they're moving so slow, and they're not just cooking along where they can't phase with the polar jet coming out of Canada. And that's what we've seen this year, so this could lead to some big winter storms this winter. If we continue to see this pattern that we've seen so far this fall. We've been cooler than average most certainly, except for maybe a couple of weeks throughout the last couple of months. Above average precipitation has certainly returned. Early frosts and freezes throughout the region back in late September, early October. That was a couple of weeks ahead of schedule there. And we've seen some early snowfall with Sandy also. As a matter of fact, where 1 to 2 inches of accumulation fell east of Cincinnati, out in Brown and Highland counties, Adams County, Clinton County got an inch or so up there. A half-inch reported in Lebanon. CVG recorded a trace, not measurable, but our first flakes of the season. And as a matter of fact, earlier this morning, today's November 3rd, of course, but earlier this morning I had a little sleet mixed in before it changed over to light rain. So we've had some excitement already, and it's only November here, early November, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so let's talk about ENSO. Are we looking at La Nada, which is neutral, or a weak El Nino? First of all, let's take a look at this graphic on the left. And ENSO region 3.4, this guy right here, that is the official measurement of ENSO. So El Nino is of course warmer than average sea surface temperatures along the equator, and La Nina would be the opposite, cooler than average. Neutral would be about average. Now, as you can see, we have warmed into weak El Nino status over the summer, but then we had a big drop, and it looked like it was going to go neutral, but it has started to rise again. So could we still see a weak El Nino this winter? This is going to be big if this can happen, because my research shows for Cincinnati that we have seen our coldest and snowiest winters with a weak El Nino. So that's important. So it'll be interesting to see if that keeps rising. It's going to be west-based also, because this is west toward the international date line, INSO regions 3 and 4, and that's where the warmest anomalies are. Closer to the South American coast along the equator, that's INSO region 1 and 2, and it's cooler than average. So it's a west-based neutral conditions trying to transition to weak El Nino right now is basically what we're seeing. And here, the graphic on the right over here, this is just showing basically a loop of the last month or so of the temperature anomalies as you go through the depths of the ocean. This is the surface at the top, and this is getting, lower in depth toward the bottom. And you can see that we do have some warmer than average water near the surface, and it is certainly west-based before it magically disappears. So we're going to watch that. Here's the current sea surface temperature anomalies for the globe. What's going to stick out like a sore thumb is a negative PDO. See this horse-shaped region here of below normal SSTs, the Gulf of Alaska, the Bering Sea, and just off the west coast of the United States. Now, this is a classic minus PDO signature, the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. That has big implications because that can favor trophiness in the west and ridge over the east. However, I think the negative NAO and the negative EPO, which we'll talk about later, blocking in these two areas, are going to trump this effect. And that's what I'm thinking right now on that. So just wanted to point out the negative PDO basically on this map. I thought that to be rather interesting. Here's what some of the climate models are saying about El Nino. This is the CFS version 2 put out by the CPC, as I said earlier. There's the downward slide from weak Nino status, but now it's going back toward neutral, and they say pretty much neutral throughout the winter season, and we don't start rising back into weak El Nino till late spring. So it's going with neutral conditions. The European model, this is from October 1st, it's a little bit warmer than the CPC, but it's basically borderline neutral weak, high-end neutral, I guess, if you want to call it. And then the IRI folks from mid-October, they're basically going with the same thing as the European, just a steadily weakening weak El Nino here. I would much prefer a weak El Nino in this case, but I think we're probably going to be neutral the way it's looking. So we're not going to get a strong INSO signal to calculate into our winter forecast any way you look at it. Now about the blocking, here's the NAO forecast. Look at this is July over here, and here's present day. Well, I can't draw a straight line, but there's present day right there. And as you can see, we have been negative NAO overall this fall. I mean, that's contributed to the cooler average conditions that we've seen. So over the summer, it did not have that effect. That basically gave us a blocking pattern, but it kept the heat around. But now that the jet stream shifted south, it's been negative pretty much for the most of the fall season, so that's helped. And that's a good sign for the upcoming winter, most definitely. The PNA, the Pacific North American Index here, it's begun to turn positive late October, early November. That has constituted to a ridge out west and a trough in the east. That helped for Sandy. As you can see, it's rising, so that could help for a New England storm, again, a nor'easter next week. But just look at the trends. It's been mainly positive all fall, except for a little period where we had that mild weather of 80 degrees a couple of weeks ago. That's when the PNA was negative, but it's been primarily positive here, as you can see. So that's good signs for the winter. Here's the EPO. Again, this is ridging over Alaska, northwest Canada. As you can see, it's been negative quite a bit this fall, especially in October. That has again helped to the colder than normal temperatures over the eastern U.S. Good signs for the winter. The PDO and QBO, the PDO is dropping, as you can see. That water's getting colder in the Gulf of Alaska out there. As you can see, it's dropping, so we got to watch that. However, the QBO is rising, the quasi-binary oscillation. We like it around -10 to +10 in this index because it helps promote blocking. It is rising. That's a good sign. How far does it rise? We don't know, but it's a good sign that it is rising. We want it to get it to -10 would be great, but it is rising, so that's a good sign. Here's stratospheric that can help promote blocking in the Arctic regions to help force the polar vortex southward into its classic Hudson's Bay spot. And here's some zonal wind time series here, and as you can see, the stratosphere has begun to warm in October. This is a good sign going into winter. This is what we want to see, because that might get some blocking going as we get into December or January. And this is great news to see this. The stratosphere is, of course, way high up in the atmosphere. One of the highest layers in our atmosphere. It's way up there. And you want to see warming in the stratosphere if you want to get cold air outbreaks. This is a good sign too. So snow and ice cover. Most of Siberia is covered. Quarters of Alaska is covered. And most of Canada is covered except for the southeastern part of the country. But we're doing really good in this department. There's going to be a lot of cold air production this winter. This looks great. And this is from the Rutgers Global Snow Lab. Normal for this time of year. And this is as of yesterday, and the red is below average. You can see southern Canada is doing really well here. We could use some in southeast Canada, of course, but for cold air production for us here in the Ohio Valley, this is wonderful to see this. This is excellent. Alaska is not doing bad at all, really. Snow cover can change. This is looking fine. Below average, probably north of I-70. Neoland, you're included, certainly southern, Michigan, northern Indiana, and normal for everybody else. For January, it looks like it's indicating some ridging going on here over the plains with a mean trough over New England. I disagree. I think it's going to be further west. You're going to see more blocking up this way. We need to see some red up here, is how I think it's going to be for January. And we'll pull that trough back west and put this dark ridging area right over here. I think this is a little too far east. If it does set up further west than this configuration, we got ridging here, trough here, and a little ridging over, out here along the coast. This could be good for us. I think I would shift that west a little bit for January. And here's February for temperatures. Again, it's a little more like January, pretty much. Again, shift it west, in my honest opinion. I would go ahead and do that. And this is the Japanese model here for December, January, and February. It's a 27-member ensemble, and it does show blocking up in the Arctic. You can certainly see a negative NAO with some ridging over Greenland. Looks to be a little west-based on this map. And you can see the negative EPO, the negative Eastern Pacific Oscillation with the ridging over Alaska, northwest Canada. I would like to draw this a little further south, but this is for temperatures. You could see we're kind of on the border. This is like below average, kind of runs through the Appalachians, where you have west of the Alps below average temperatures, east of the Alps, Appalachian Mountains, above average temperatures, slightly above. So could we have a weak southeast ridge here that might force the storm track along the east coast or maybe along the Appalachians? This could be interesting for us if this model's correct. And here's my storm track model. And I was just talking about the big EPO ridge over Alaska, northwest Canada, and the Pacific Northwest. A split flow jet stream pattern with the polar jet coming up and over top of the ridge, diving out of Canada. And then here's the subtropical jet with storm systems undercutting the ridge, and they're staying down here. When these two phase in this area, then depending on how strong the NAO is, the block in Greenland, they could force the storm track up along the east coast or some APS runners for us. The polar vortex I'm expecting by January most certainly to be in the classic Hudson's Bay region. Here's my forecast for Cincinnati. I'm just going to run through this quickly. I'm just going to let you read them, and this is what I think. Okay, sorry I had to blow through that last part. I'll post the map separately. I'm running out of time, but thank you very much for watching this year's Outlook, and I'll take any questions if you have any. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.